Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is the Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call. I am Brian T. Jackett, your host for today. On today's agenda, we've got great presentations we're doing. Before we get to those, though, we'll do a quick little round of news in the Microsoft 365 Platform area. We'll talk about our monthly contributors. We thank everyone for joining in for those things. And we'll do our together mode picture as usual. Now, whether you are new to the Microsoft 365 developer platform or you're an old hat, lots of great different resources available to you. We have two different video channels that you can take a look into. There is the Microsoft 365 developer videos, a little more of the official videos out there for walking you through different tutorials or explain different topics for you, as well as the Microsoft 365 community videos, where a lot of our community calls, such as this one, any of the recordings will be posted to, so you can actually go back and see different events and weekly highlights that are out there. As well, a lot of the things that are available on M365 developer platform are open source. So if you'd like to be able to contribute back, whether it's documentation, whether it's issues, whether it's actually fixing some things in some of the code that's out there, we'd love to have your support out there. There's a very broad community of folks. Some of them we'll actually talk about a little bit later on in our monthly recap. Lots of great ways to be able to plug into this. You can find the links on the page on here. And also, if you're looking for sample galleries, it's great to be able to see things in demos or to hear about them on our calls here. But we also have ways for you to actually go and test these things out in your own environments. So if you're working with team solutions, if you're building SharePoint framework solutions, Power Platform, and more, we've got lots of different galleries available to you. And as always, if you don't want to get overwhelmed by all these different URLs that are out there, we do have our one-stop shop, aka.ms/m365pnp, where you can find all of the different meeting invites, all the different resources, links, and so forth. Great way to get plugged into the environment and be able to contribute back in. Now, in addition to our own M365 developer community call here, this is a weekly call on Tuesdays. Do note that we will be taking a break during the months of July and August. This is for summer break for a lot of the folks in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a little bit more difficult to schedule folks, so we will be taking breaks during July and August. We will be coming back in September, though, so please do look for us in that month. Aside from this call, though, we do have a number of other ones that are out there available. Things for adaptive cards, for identity platform, for Office add-ins, Power Platform, Viva Connections, SharePoint, and more. You can find all these different invites at aka.ms/m365/calls. Now, if you're looking to get started in the M365 ecosystem, a lot of great resources that are available to you out there. Two that we do want to highlight on here on the page. The first is our Microsoft 365 developer program. With this, you can get a free E5 developer tenant. This is great for being able to do some sandbox deployments, be able to test things out literally as a tenant administrator. So really, you have full control to that tenant. And it comes with content as well as those E5 licenses. You can find more at aka.ms/m365/dev program. Sign up today and get your tenant available to you. Also, we have a lot of great training material out there as well on Microsoft Learn. This is a lot of great things in terms of being able to see some learning paths and different training modules, other things that you can actually go and see, all for free. So there is no charge for this training. You can find this at aka.ms/m365/dev/learn. Also, if you'd like to plug into a couple of our different podcasts, we do have two that we'd like to highlight. The first one is the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast by our very own Jeremy Thake and Paul Schaeflein. In this, they'll cover different news and announcements going on in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, as well as do interviews with various folks from product groups or from other engineering teams. A great way to kind of see behind the curtain on what's available, what things are coming, and hear a little bit of the stories behind what's going on with those. You can find more at m365devpodcast.com. And we also have our Microsoft 365 PMP Weekly, hosted by Vesa and Waldeck. Great information that they're sharing in terms of the community, what things are going on, talking to product group members. Great way to get to see what is available to us inside of the M365 ecosystem. You can find more at the aka.ms/PMP Weekly, or also the podcast on pmpweekly.podbean.com. Now, in terms of our samples, as I mentioned on the earlier slide, we've got a lot of different samples that are available to us out there from a lot of different technologies, from Graph to Viva to Office add-ins to PMP to SPFX and more. We are actually at 1,099 samples, literally one away from breaking that 1,100 mark. I remember months back when we were doing this call, we were in like the hundreds, like 500, 600. So great to see this growth that we've had over the past months here. Please continue to share back and contribute to this. You can find more for getting involved, see what those samples are, and installing them to your own tenants at aka.ms/m365/samples. And we'll turn things over to David to talk to us a little bit about our Sharing is Caring initiative.
David is not actually here because he has an on-site in Redmond. It's that time of the year, so everybody's traveling. But as you might be wondering, how do I get started with those samples, or how do I get started on contributing maybe in our community side? And that's why we actually created already a while back a Sharing is Caring initiative. And from AKMS/Sharing is Caring, you can find more details around this. And this is really helping you hands-on on getting started on either using some of the technologies which we have in Microsoft 365, or contributing in GitHub, or consuming the material in a GitHub. Now, the next event in here is around Power Platform, and that's going to be 2-time event. So there's going to be 2 separate events to go through that, hosted by Hugo Bernier and David Warner. But through the summertime, you will not see as many events happening in the Sharing is Caring initiative, but we'll get back on, let's say, in a normal flow of business in the August timeframe. But please take advantage of this. They are really, really awesome events, and people give always such a great feedback on this. Back to you, Brian. Actually, it's back to me. If you go from the following slide. Yes.
Yep. And we'll actually keep with Vesa to tell us a little bit about our community updates and what things are going on in the community.
Yeah, so something that we're working together with Microsoft 365 and Azure is that we're working to introduce this Microsoft Community Initiative and Microsoft Cloud Community Initiative. And this is really about us from Microsoft helping the community to make events and coordinate events and make things happen. So we are looking into having this one unified, let's say, door to everything around Microsoft Community, and that's looking also for community members. So we will have a community advisory board, which is basically a selected group of people for, is it 12 to 18 months? I can't remember. And then we will re-elect people in that board after a while. Right now, as we're starting this, we want to have volunteers to submit to be a volunteer in the community advisory board, and it can be you. So anybody in this call who's interested about community and empowering other people, sharing is caring mentality, please sign in to that form and let us know that you're interested in being part of that. We're looking into all of the different people across the world to be involved. So we also released today, this is actually from a social media perspective, this is going to be released within 30 minutes. We have the update of June 2022 on the Microsoft 365 platform community. And this is the one blog post where we're listing all of the videos and samples and edits and guidances and references, what has happened within the last month, and not forgetting about all of the contributors. So all of the community contributors and Microsoft contributors who've been involved in our open source and community efforts. We are starting to list all of the community members, so we will not call you out in this call, but we want to thank you all for being actively involved within the last month within our open source and community efforts. So basically contributing in docs, in GitHub, in samples, doing videos, demos, whatever is available for you to take advantage. We can see that there's a lot of names, new names, and some of the old, some of the familiar names as well. It's great to see both new names and people continuing being active in here. So thank you everybody for being actively involved. We really appreciate this, because again, we from Microsoft, we provide technology and platform. You as an ecosystem, customers and partners, you use that on day-to-day basis. So having your insights and feedback for us is super critical. These are also the companies which we have a permission to show their logos. So if your name was listed in the previous slides and your company logo is not here, please ping us on LinkedIn or in Twitter or in whatever the format is, and give us your permission to show their company logo, and we'll promote the company here as well. So these are the companies who allow their employees to be active on the community side. And this is then the list of all of the Microsoft employees which have been involved in the open source community side across the Microsoft 365 platform community efforts. So thank you for Microsoft employees as well. Many of them are spending their evenings and weekends to making these things happen. So it's not necessarily that it's part of their role. So thank you for that. And I guess that's the quick summary on all of the community assets. Yes, it is. Let's go to the news. Back to you, Brian.
All right. Thank you so much, Vesa. And yes, echoing that, a big thanks to everyone who has been in our community, contributing back. We'd love to see all of your wonderful contributions, and we appreciate them so much. Now we'll move into some of the different news items that we've got going on in the community. First, we'll go to the Microsoft 365 developer blog. We have 2 different blog posts on here. The first one is for the Microsoft Teams JS SDK version 2. Yes, a little bit of a mouthful. This is now generally available. What's great about this is we're now actually taking that ability to deploy Teams apps now into additional hubs. So first things first, targeting things like Outlook. It's a great way to be able to see those apps being able to have native integrations. So basically build once and run in multiple locations. This is the first release of this. Again, we are starting to add more and more capabilities over time. Please do take a look at that blog post and see what is available for the manifest, for the SDK, and other updates that are available with it. Also, another update coming from the Microsoft Bookings team. They have released application permissions for their API on Graph. We love to see that additional support for other types of permissions on here. So if you have additional feedback for this or other things that you're looking for, take a look at the blog post on here. Do take a look at our feedback portal where you can actually also pass in your votes for other things you may be looking for on the Microsoft 365 platform. Turning over to the team side of the house, we do have 5 different updates and blog posts out there that we wanted to share out there. First, with the Inside Microsoft podcast, they did some interviews with a coffee roaster as well as a Power BI data analytics team, really kind of showing what did they do during pandemic in terms of adapting their businesses, being able to continue to be productive and supporting their customers. Some really good insights just into how things kind of function and they were able to adapt and continue to thrive out there. Also, we got some updated guidance and information coming from 2 of our partners, Confluence and Zendesk. They show some increased integrations they've got with the Teams platform, so showing the different updates that they've applied to this and are rolling out to customers. Good to see our partners integrating into the ecosystem, as well as the ways that they're leveraging the platform to help folks out. Next, in terms of hybrid meetings, you may have seen some different blog posts out there about the Microsoft Teams. They got these things called Teams Rooms. There's some insights into here about how Microsoft itself is actually incorporating those types of best practices, different technologies, and also updates just the Teams platform to help make it a very inclusive kind of process for folks that are potentially attending a meeting remotely. I actually did get a chance to test this out myself last week while I was on site. Very cool to see some different technology and ways that we're supporting folks to really have those inclusive meetings. I can tell you it is very much of a kind of night and day difference from how things used to be maybe 5 or so years ago. Now people are much more on a kind of even playing field when it comes to having those Teams meetings and having people included into there. And lastly, there are 2 updates just in terms of Teams meetings, being able to have some kind of improvements we have from the AI side of things, in terms of noise cancellation, in terms of being able to have call quality, making sure that people's voices are heard as clearly as possible. Also, the video feeds come in through without artifacts and so forth. So a lot of great little highlights and tips that they show about this in the 2 last blog posts on there. With this, we'll turn things over to, I believe it's Wajid, to talk to us a little bit about the Teams platform docs updates.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Hello, everyone. I will walk through the Teams platform updates, starting with the sending welcome message to the selected channel. Welcome messages from your conversation apps are the first thing users see after the installation. They play a core part in highlighting your app's main features, starting the setup flow and onboarding users. Before this feature, apps welcome messages was always sent to the general channel and not to the user selected channel. With this update, welcome messages will be automatically routed to the user selected channel post installation. When an app is installed in Teams context from the client, the user selected channel ID from the installation flow would now be set to the conversation ID for the installation update and the conversation update event. There are no changes required for the bots that are currently using reply ID, using installation update and the conversation update event using the conversation ID. This should be the case for most of the apps. Bots that are not using provided conversation ID to send a welcome message in Teams can be updated to reply using this value to take the advantage. Note that this is currently available only in developer preview. Going to the second update, it's on App Studio deprecation. App Studio will be deprecated by June 30. Now you can configure, distribute, and manage your Teams app within the new developer portal. Your existing apps will be available in developer portal under apps/App Studio section. You can upgrade these apps to the latest configurations so that you can start using them in developer portal. So these were the platform updates. If you have any feedback or any suggestion, please post it on ak.ms Teams platform feedback. The link is available in the footer. You could also follow us on Twitter and configure the RSS feed to get the regular platform updates. Thank you. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Wajid. And with this, we'll turn things over to our group picture time. So if you'd like to, please turn on your video cameras. We'd love to see your bright and smiling, shiny faces. Already seen a bunch coming in there. Excellent. Vesa, if you want to switch over to do the recording from yours. All right, thank you so much. I will pull back up the presentation. Now we'll move into the actual stars for today's show. We've got our demos from Greg, giving us a little bit about basic authentication, Andrew on Graph.net SDK 5, and Seb doing a little bit about the Graph Postman collection. First things first, though, we'll kick off with Greg. The floor is yours.
Terrific. Thank you very much. I will endeavor to share my slides, and I'll say hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me come and have the opportunity to talk about something rather important that we're doing with Basic Auth and Exchange Online, something that involves customers, developers, partners, everybody. It's a fairly impactful change, and frankly, as much help as we can get from everyone, the better. So I'm Greg Taylor. I'm a product manager in M365 Core. I'm focused on Exchange and security. And what I want to briefly try and walk through with this audience today is a reminder of, hopefully you're aware of what we're doing in Basic Auth and Exchange Online. If not, this will be a brief summary. How we are telling customers to go find the usage that they have and what it means, what they're going to do about it. And then there's a bunch of useful links as well. So I'm going to run through as quickly as I can. Happy to follow up with questions in the chat or wherever. Okay, so here's the real lowdown. So beginning October 1st, 2022, we are going to start to turn off Basic Auth for a number of protocols, for 8 different protocols. I'm going to highlight a few keywords because some of the communication, customers, however clearly we put it, some customers will interpret it to mean something different. So I'm going to say the word beginning October 1st. We will begin to turn off Basic Auth for a number of protocols. That means we will not turn everyone off on October 1st. That would be a pretty awful day to work in Microsoft support, if that were the case. We're also not turning off the protocols themselves. Just be super clear on that. ActiveSync, as a great example, keeps coming up. People keep asking, so you're turning off ActiveSync? No, we're turning off Basic Auth for Exchange ActiveSync. So those iPhones and on Androids will continue to work, but they just can't use Basic Auth. So we're turning off POP and IMAP. You may or may not be surprised, there are still a lot of people using POP and IMAP, primarily applications, not really client day-to-day usage for email, but there is still quite a lot of that going on. Then we're turning off the protocols that Outlook uses, MAPI and RPC, offline address book, and Exchange Web Services. Exchange Web Services, as I'm sure many of you know, is also used by a lot of different applications for all kinds of reasons. So that will be impacted too. ActiveSync I already mentioned, and then Remote PowerShell. So like I said, we're not turning off the protocols, we're turning off Basic Auth, and all of these protocols already support OAuth, Modern Auth. Now, another thing that we announced we were going to do would be we would interrupt Basic Auth for customers between now and October as we rolled this out. I will tell you that that's primarily focused at the SMB end of the market. SMB and EDU customers, primarily SMB customers, they're not the ones that read the message center. They don't read the blogs. They don't hang on every word I put out on Basic Auth. So there will be some interruptions of service. There are ways customers can go and opt out of that. Read the documentation. There's a link on here, but there's also notes in the blogs and the message center posts, where if a customer can go in and say, please don't touch Basic Auth for IMAP, I still need it, don't mess around. And if we do go and turn it off for 48 hours, as soon as they notice, they can actually go in to the admin center and turn it back on. Within 15 minutes, it will be back on again. So it's a rolling interruption of service, something we haven't really done before. And yes, Paul, you might call it a screen test. we are doing it to quite a few customers at the moment, and I'm hearing a few screams, and that's okay, right? Customers can turn it back on again. After October, though, that's it. Okay, so the other one I want to really call out as well is SMTP auth, used for sending mail outbound. We have already turned off SMTP auth for customers that don't use it, basic auth. And we've turned it off for millions of tenants. I'll tell you already, we've turned off basic auth for millions of tenants right now who don't use it, but for whom it was enabled. So we're actually protecting customers by turning it off. But SMTP, if it is still in use, we are not going to touch it. Even if we turn it off, you can turn SMTP back on. And the main reason for that is there are a ton of devices and hardware devices that really can't be updated to support OAuth flows. So we will allow SMTP auth for the foreseeable future. We have no plans to turn that off. So the question then most customers ask is, how do I know if I'm using basic auth or not? So there's a couple of places I want to point you to. So one is we've been sending message center posts to all the tenants who use basic auth every month since about October last year. It is the mother of all mail merges. Think of it like that. We send a customized per tenant message center post to every tenant using basic auth with a summary of using this much IMAP and this much POP and everything else. I will say it's indicative, it's not precise numbers. It's indicative because if you think about something like Exchange Web Services, it's used by applications, it's used by Outlook, for Windows, for Mac. It's a little hard to be precise exactly how many users in any particular time are using specific applications at our level, at an aggregate level. However, if you want the detail, then Azure AD signing reports is really the place a customer, a partner, whomever can go find the detail. So message center posts are about, I know there's basic auth usage. Azure AD reports are about who's the user, what's the IP address, what's the machine name, and so on and so forth. That's really where you find the detail. There's a filter in the client app settings in the Azure AD signing reports. You want everything under legacy. But if you're a large customer, there is a link as well, because the report there will not be very easy to download if you're a large customer with a lot of usage, and you might want to use Azure AD workbooks or something like that instead. Stream it to Log Analytics. Now, when you get all of this data, when a customer gets all of this data, then it's like, well, okay, what do I do now? Well, the first thing is get the data exported in JSON format if you are downloading, not CSV, because JSON format will give you all the user agent strings. And user agent strings, while not obviously 100% infallible, are very useful to help customers identify what the usage is and where it's coming from. If I were to write a bad app, I probably wouldn't create a user agent string of my evil app version 1.0. I would probably try and hide it. So user agent strings are not infallible, but for most customers, they're incredibly useful. So I'm going to run through a couple of kind of suggestions for how we typically suggest customers go and interpret the data. We'll go protocol by protocol. So let's start with ActiveSync. If you have got a bunch of basic auth usage with ActiveSync, what do you do? Well, if you're a large customer, you probably have an MDM. If you have an MDM solution, you need to use it to change the profile, to change the authentication type. Now, Apple's MDM API, for example, does not allow you to modify the auth type of an existing profile. You have to create a new profile, tell it to use OAuth, push it to the device, meaning the device will then have to resync mail. But you can use the MDM. Intune can do it, Workspace ONE can do it, all of those can do it. So push a new profile using OAuth and not basic auth. If there isn't an MDM, there is something I was hoping to talk about on the call, but it's not quite ready yet. Been working with Apple and Google on some stuff, but we'll hopefully have something public on that fairly soon. But the most practical solution for users is remove the account from the device and add it back. That sounds rather rubbish, I know. The native mail app on an iPhone has supported OAuth for 2 years or more. Why is it still using basic auth? Because there are a lot. Well, it's using basic auth because the user had their first iPhone more than 2 years ago. They configured their email. It was using basic auth. They then went to the Apple Store or wherever and got themselves a new iPhone. Shiny new iPhone, and the first thing it says is, do you want me to transfer your data and settings? You're like, well, that sounds like a good idea. I should do that. And all the pictures of your family and your cats and everything come across, and all your settings, which include the authentication type used for the mail app. So it will keep using basic, even though it's the newest iPhone. So remove the account, add it back. Okay, Certificate-based auth, I'll call this out, is not basic auth. Certificate-based auth, if you're using that for ActiveSync, will show up under legacy auth in the Azure AD Signer reports, but it is not going to be effective when we turn off basic auth. Slightly confusing. We're trying to clarify it. I actually have a call today to try and get some of this clarified in our documentation. Okay, jumping forward. Outlook for Windows. There's a variety of protocols being used. Biggest flag at the top here is this OAuth 2 client profile enabled flag. It's a per tenant flag used with get organization config, set organization config. If that flag is set to false, Outlook for Windows cannot do modern auth. It is told not to. It's only Outlook for Windows that's affected by this particular switch. Make sure your a tenant has the flag set to true. Outlook for Windows can do modern auth. And then when you look through user agent strings, then there's the user agent string will tell you what version of Outlook is in play, by whether it has a 14, 15, or 16 in it. If it's a 14, it's Outlook 2010. And yeah, people are still using Outlook 2010. Okay, and 15 is Outlook 2013. Needs a registry key though. Can do modern auth. 16 should be doing modern auth. And so if you see 16 in there, somebody's done something. It should be doing modern auth and it's not. Either the flag is set in the tenant to be false, or they've gone and pushed out some kind of policy. People are falling asleep to my voice. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. All right, I'll keep plugging on regardless. Sorry if I'm losing your audience, Brian and Vesa. Right, so EWS. This one's a bit tricky. I know there are lots of developers. There's a ton of apps out there still using basic auth. The user agent strings are mostly helpful. Python requests 2.26.0 is not very helpful. Customers are discovering applications that are using basic auth. They need help from, they're going to need help from developers, partners, everybody to figure out what they're going to do to remediate the app. EWS can do OAuth. Clearly, Graph would be a preferential way to go, but this is the time to redevelop your app from EWS to Graph, probably a little late. That should be more of a strategic goal rather than a tactical goal. I've called out a couple of things in here as well. If you see user agent strings from Surface Hubs and from Teams rooms, the Teams rooms devices are using basic auth. There are updates coming from the Teams team, but you can go in the Teams admin center or the admin console and change the device to use modern auth very quickly and easily. Customers need to do that or they are going to get cut off. POP, IMAP, and PowerShell. Believe it or not, there's still quite a lot there going on. There are no user agent strings in the protocol, so we have no idea what the client app is that's being used. I know there's a lot of applications that are using them. They all of these protocols support modern auth flows. Client credential flow for POP and IMAP will be out very, very soon for non-interactive flows. But for client apps and in any kind of app that supports an interactive flow, code is already there. People are going to need help though. So again, make sure customers look in the message center. Then they know if they have a problem or not. Use the Azure AD Sign reports to get the detail. Figure out what to do with the users. Communicate to the users. There's a great example of how one of the EDUs has taken the data from Azure AD Sign reports and they pop it into the user portal. These are the devices you use that are going to get cut off. Make sure that the email clients and stuff are up to date. For POP and IMAP, maybe Outlook on the web. I would rather not use Outlook on the web day to day. I live in Outlook, but many users will put up and be very happy with the current versions of OA. And let's try and get secure. So my last slide here is there's a bunch of informational links. I'll leave it at that. IT Pro stuff at the top, developer focused stuff at the bottom. Any help you can all give to get our customers secure and off basic auth, I will be eternally grateful, as will they.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Greg. Very useful information, and we hope that everyone does pay attention. These dates are coming fast, and we would like people to definitely make sure that they're prepared and ready for this once the cutoff date hits. Excellent. At this point, we'll turn over to Andrew to talk to us a little bit about the Graph.net SDK v5. Andrew, if you'd like to share your screen, and the floor is yours.
So, hey everyone, my name is Andrew, and I'm from the Graph Developer Experiences team. So today I just wanted to talk a bit about the Graph.net v5 SDK that we are working on right now. And we're just hoping to address some of the few changes that we're making and enhancements to enrich the user experiences that's going to help us make it a better experience for everyone. So the new version of the SDK is generated with a new tool called Kyoto. So we've been working together with the team for the past few months to get this one up and running. And we have a few enhancements that have been coming in that enable us to make and do things that we couldn't really do before. Amongst them, which I will talk a bit about more later, is like the backing store and calling various endpoints like the OData cast and the OData count and the use of parameter objects. So the first thing I wanted to talk about really is like the change of the developer experience. And at the top of the slide, you can see what you would currently do to make a call with the V4, and the bottom with the new preview version of V5. And you notice like a couple of things, and one of them is like that there is no longer the request function in the whole Fluent API method calls to make the use of the SDK a bit more succinct, as well as now the configuration of the request is done with like a lambda that is passed over to the get or post or purchase sync method. And this really, with the help of accurate descriptions that we're getting from the various API owners, enables us to have like a rich experience with regards to the IntelliSense. Because now, like, for example, like the count there now is like a strongly typed parameter, like it's a Boolean, or the select is like a collection of strings. Vis-a-vis there, you need to figure out like whether how the string needs to be formatted and correct, and that would result in like various user errors when making calls to the graph. So the next thing I also wanted to talk about was the backing store. And really the backing store it enables like data tracking of the changes in various objects. And like you notice, like with version 4 of the SDK, like in a scenario where you're trying to like disable the recurrence of an event, let's say you fetch the event and then you try and set the recurrence property to null and then send it back. What you notice is that really won't work because the serializer won't really send out null values. But now with V5, we have this backing store that keeps track of changes that's happening to the object when it comes back. And therefore, you should just be able to set the property to null and send it back, and that will sort out your issue. And since now we are also keeping track of the object, we only send the properties that change rather than the entire object as well. So that will result in like a smaller payload being sent out, better efficiency, and we should probably notice better performance in whatever scenarios that you are working with. I also wanted to talk about is now the use of parameter objects. So like in a given scenario where you are trying to maybe call the send mail API, currently in version 4, these parameters of the data function are literally function parameters of the send mail function. So what we've done is we've moved over to using a request body, which is basically like a nested, is an object that nests these properties inside. So like in this scenario, we have like a send mail post request body, and therefore the message and the save to send items parameters will be properties inside this object. And therefore, with this, you just pass the object over to the post method. And in the event, like when the API endpoint has changed or the API evolves to maybe introduce like new parameters to the API, this doesn't result in like clients having breaking changes or running into issues because the send mail function has added new parameters. And therefore, this results to like better user experience for everyone and a cleaner solution for everyone that's trying to use the SDK. finally, I just was hoping to talk about like a couple of scenarios that weren't really supported in the current version for the SDK. And the first one really was calling like the $count endpoints or $count segments or data. So this is a scenario like whereby you're trying to like get the number of users in your tenant or something. So you just want to get that as an integer and get it back into your app to figure out what you want to do next. So you can't really do this. You really have to probably build the URL yourself and make your own native HTTP request. But now with the use of Kyoto and using the generated SDK, you can just use this single line of code to configure request, get the count, and get that to use it. Then the next scenario is the support for the OData cast segment. So this is where now you want like API side filtering, especially for APIs that give like a collection of different types of object. So let's say you want to get members of the group, and the members of the group could be users or applications or any other type. So with the new version 5 that we're working on in preview, you can just add the extra segment like to get like members that are users. And this will eliminate the need for you to do like client-side filtering and add all that logic that would make life a bit harder for you. So you can just follow the link. There are a lot of other changes that we are working on. So the link will lead you to detailed changes of things that are going on, the new version. It's in preview. We are looking for feedback from everyone. So please give us feedback on GitHub and let us know what we can do to make it better. With the current version, we are going to continue supporting it with metadata updates weekly as we continually do. That's it from me. I'll hand it over back to Brian.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Great to hear about the updates coming for the .NET SDK for this. With this, there's one last question, I think, in the chat window if you want to address that one, Andrew. But otherwise, we'll turn things over to Seb to give us a little overview of the Graph Postman collection. Seb, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Andrew. Great to see that movement on the .NET and the .NET 5, not .NET 5, on the V5 version of our .NET SDK. I'm a little bit tired. I'm sorry, everybody. So today I want to do a quick introduction to our Postman collection for Microsoft Graph, but this will be a series of different sessions. We don't know exactly yet how much of them, but at least 2 or 3 sessions around how can you get great tooling to play with Postman in Microsoft Graph. The reason why is we really believe that there is a strong connection between Postman as a tool and Microsoft Graph as an API that can work together. In this session, I want to go through the fundamentals of what Postman is, how does it play together with Graph, how can you get some sort of data through Postman connecting to Microsoft Graph. But the next couple of sessions, we're going to go and really do some advanced scenario, doing chaining of different requests. We're going to do how does this integrate with our own Graph Explorer, what are the scenarios of what to use when, and all of that. But for today, it's really around the introduction to Postman for Microsoft Graph. Look at this beautiful animation. That's great. So first, what is Postman? If you've never used Postman, it's absolutely okay. Postman has been there for a long time. Is usually one of the tools that is basically open at all time for anybody that are heavily using APIs or building APIs. Postman is a full API platform. It helps you test, build, validate, work as a team. But one of the parts that we want to focus on today is really around using an API. So it really enables you to use APIs in a secured way, in a very convenient way. It simplifies each step of the API, and it enables you to work collaboratively around the API. So it's a full platform. There is a free version that we're going to use today, which is absolutely sufficient to do what we want to do with Microsoft Graph. But if you're looking into more the enterprise capabilities, you can definitely look into what Postman can offer. We're going to first start with a small demo around the Postman fundamentals. And here it's really just to kind of get you used to the UI, used to the capabilities that Postman really offers. And from there, we're going to move on to more graph-related topics. So let me start. Let me go to here. So first, this is, and I'm just going to close these things so it's not too confusing. When you land into Postman, you have a Graph Explorer-like experience, or maybe we can say that the Graph Explorer has a Postman-like experience. It's a chicken or the egg situation here. I'm going to let you figure out which one came first. But in this case, I already added two different what we call collections to my workspace. The first one is the Microsoft Graph. We're going to come back to this one a little bit later. But the second one is called the Postman Echo. Think about the Echo service from Postman as a way to test the capabilities of what Postman really offers. And let's start with the first thing. And I think that's one of the most useful, the most even used scenario, which is around getting content from an API. Doing a simple get to an API and get the content here. So for example, if I expand the Postman Echo that I have here, so when you create a new Postman account, you automatically get the Postman Echo in there. So don't delete it. It's super useful to go back to the basics every single time. So for example, if I do a request method, here I can just click here and let's look at what we have here. First, we have the resource that we're looking for. In that case, it's a postmanecho.com/get with a couple of parameters that are in there. And I have a big send button. That send button will do the action. So it's going to use the HTTP verb that we have here. We'll send that to this endpoint, and we will get a response that will show up right here. So what is great with this is now we have the ability not only to do a request, but also to basically expose the entire response back to you. When you're building an application that calls into an API, having this is a great way for you to understand what you have available. So for example, when you're looking into an OData API, when you're going to do your different select or different filters or even different top and limit capabilities or even count, you will see exactly what you will be getting back from it. So that's a great way to understand the shape of the data and understand what you can do with that data. So when you expect a response back from that API, you know exactly how the data is shaped. Though we're not just doing gets, we can do all sorts of different capabilities. Like for example, I can do just a post. So I can basically send raw capabilities here to this one here. And when I hit send, it automatically brings it back. So basically that API is really an echo API, right? I send something to the API and the API sends it back to me just to make sure that I'm not crazy, that I sent the right thing and that I'm getting the right thing. So it's a great way to explore the features of Postman, not necessarily the one you want to use to build capabilities in your app, or it's gonna feel a little bit lonely in your app. That being said, it really helps you to understand how you can control the different capabilities of Postman. Because when we get into Graph, you're going to see that there are a lot of capabilities that we're using in Graph. And I really believe that going back to the basics with a Postman Echo collection is a great step for you. So there will be a couple of things you can do with here, and I'll let you explore this. I don't want to go too much into the deeds here, but I think what is important is always use that collection to go back to the basics. If you want to test something, if you want to understand how to use a buddy, a JSON object to send in your to your API whatsoever, you can definitely do that. Now, let's talk a little bit about Graph. If you go back here, we have built an entire Postman collection for Microsoft Graph. And it literally helps you get started with Graph APIs in minutes to get simplified auth, predefined endpoints, and environment variables. So when you use the link that you see here, aka.ms/graph/postman, when you get to that link, you will be able to follow a 6 or 7 step process to get your environment set up with Postman connected to your Microsoft 365 environment. We highly recommend that you start with the Microsoft 365 developer program so you can really play around and have the full capabilities, can go on, do some admin consents on these APIs, create your own Azure AD application, and all of that. And once this is done, you will be able to fork the Microsoft Graph collection, which will give you the following. So let me go here. So first, you're going to use this guide here where we have actually an 8-step guide from forking the Microsoft Graph Postman collection. You go there, you will be able to create a fork and bring the updated or the latest version of the Graph collection inside your own environment, which is great because you're going to get notification when we change the original collection. You're going to get notifications that this has changed, so you're going to be able to bring the changes back to you. It's great. Why? Because if we add new endpoints to Graph and we add them to our Postman collection, now you're going to get access to them. The second thing you will want to do is to download potentially the Postman agent, especially if you're using the web browser. I'm a big fan of web browser. I prefer web browser to having an app installed on my machine. So I am using the Postman agent on my machine. You don't have to if you're using the rich client of Postman, which is exactly the same experience, just wrapped inside an application. The third step you will want to do is to create an Azure AD application. Let me zoom in a little bit. An Azure AD application. And why do you want to do that? Well, to be able to control the permissions that you will have access to. So you will be able to add permissions as you go for every new API. So you will know exactly what are the sets of permissions that your app might be using. That's what I highly recommend any developers. When you're using an application and you're using Postman, make sure that Postman and your application might even be using the same Azure AD app. So that way, when you test stuff in Postman, you have the same set of permissions that you have in your app. So that way you don't get data that you would not get actually in using the SDKs or using raw HTTP calls. Go through that procedure. Something really interesting that we enable with the Graph collection on Postman is support for application permissions. You cannot do application permissions today on Graph Explorer for a multitude of reasons, mainly security-specific reasons. So how can you test app permissions? Well, Postman will be your best friend. So you're going to set up your Azure AD application with support and certificate and secrets to support the full app permission cycle. Then afterwards, you will configure the authentication inside Postman to make sure that you can get tokens, either delegated or app permissions on the endpoints. You're going to be able to start and get a first delegated token. You're going to run your first delegated request. You're going to get a first app access token, and the same thing for your first app request. So the link, I would assume somebody posted it in the chat. If not, I'm going to post it right after this. It's kind of your home base to get started with Graph and Postman. But what I want to do today, I want to show you the experience once you're in Postman of these things. So first of all, let me go to my workspace here, and let me close these two tabs that I have open earlier that we're calling into the Postman Echo service. And let me expand on the Graph here. So first, you're going to find two different folders, one that is delegated and one that is application permissions. So basically, every request that live in delegated will all be using a single token. So you won't have to re-authenticate every time. You just need to use to authenticate with your delegated, and all of these requests that are here will automatically get access to the delegated token. Same thing with the application. You're going to be able to do the exact same thing. So let's start on how you get a token and how you can make a call from here. So first, you want to go to your delegated tab and you click here, and you're going to find, oh, there you go. You have a bunch of stuff that was already done using the guide that I showed earlier. You will be able to go, you go at the bottom and you're going to be able to say, get a new access token. Now I'm going to select my account, and now it just completed. So it's really, really, really well integrated between our auth service and, in this case, Postman. Then afterwards, you're going to click on use a token because that's the token you want to use. And now, let's say you want to go to the users and you want to get my profile. So now you see https://graph.microsoft.com/v1/me. We will automatically, if that's one of the beauty of using the collection, we will automatically add to the headers the right access token and make sure that you're always authenticated. So that way you won't have to copy paste that token over and over and over again. In that case, I have this one here. I click send, and automatically I get my user here. I can also go here and change it. Hey, I don't want to have the V1, I want the beta endpoint, and I can just click on send, and I'm going to get the exact same thing, but in a beta context. So that's a great first experience, right? We were able to get data from Graph without copy pasting access tokens from anywhere. We're using the authentication mechanism of Postman to achieve a simple task, but that could take a little bit of time to get to. So quite happy that this is done for us by leveraging that collection that automatically deals with all of this. And in future sessions, we're going to go see how we can leverage that automation of injecting these tokens to take advantage of when you're building other requests. So let's do the same thing. I'm going to hit don't save, and let's do the same thing with application. So the application here is exactly the same thing. The only difference is that we're using a client ID and a client secret rather than a delegated token that requires me to log in. So now I'm just going to click get access token. It used my client ID, my client secret. It got an app only token that I can now use to see maybe the list of all users. And now I can go here, I can hit send and get access to all of my users that are in tenant. And I can do this on any type of endpoint that lives into Graph that supports app permission. Last thing I want to show is how did I get all of this thing to work? Well, in my app that I'm using, I have an app that we're using, and actually the app, sorry, that we're using to authenticate. In there, we already have a list of API permissions. And here it's really up to you to decide what are the scopes that you want to support. So for example, we see that we have user.read.all, size.read.all, files.read, but let's say we don't have anything related to emails or anything related to mail or to Teams. Well, in that case, I'm going to have to go through group ID, but like we would receive back a 403, a forbidden. And then how do we get a new token? You go into your app, you add your new permission, you do a grant admin for that permission, then you can go back to getting a token through Postman and resubmit that request, and you would be good to go. So that's what I wanted to show for today, starting with the basics, the foundation of how to use Microsoft Graph and Postman. And we're going to be back next week with my colleague Rabeb on expanding on these scenarios. Brian, back to you.
Thank you so much, Seb. Great to hear the information about the Postman collection. I always appreciate your demos and all the wonderful walkthroughs that you do share out there. Share our deck. We'll wrap up with our last conclusion slide. Big thank you to everyone for joining in today. So big thank you to all of our presenters today, including Greg, Andrew, and Seb. Great information shared. We really appreciate all the information that you shared, demos, and so forth. As always, our recordings will be available within the next 24 hours or so on the M365 community YouTube channel. You can find us at aka.ms/M365PNP/videos. Please do subscribe today so you get all the latest announcements and news on that. Also follow along with us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev, as well as at M365PNP. Our next call will be next week, June 21st at 8 a.m. Pacific time, as usual. You can find all the different links for our invites at aka.ms/M365/calls. And one other additional announcement for this, again, we will be on break on the months of July and August, so please do update your calendars accordingly. With that, appreciate everyone joining in today. Really appreciate all of your feedback, all of your comments, questions, and so forth. Really great to see the community joining in. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. With that, thank you and have a good day.